You, with your unimpressive demeanor, don't deserve the drinks in this bar. Just the perfect timing. It's raining outside. Why don't you go drink some rainwater? That suits you better. After being laid off, I was dragging around a heavy heart. At the bar, I bumped into my obnoxious former boss, who snatched my seat. But then, an unexpected person appeared, and the situation took a dramatic turn. My name is Michael. I'm 59 years old and work at a small toy company called Colorado Toys. I can't say I'm great at socializing. I've always been rather poor at it. However, I always tried to be as polite as possible to my colleagues and superiors, and I even developed a hit product. But my accomplishments were usurped by my colleague Kevin, preventing my advancement. Kevin was really good at showing himself in a positive light. He would dump troublesome tasks on others, yet talk as if he had struggled through them himself. My inability to articulate well didn't help my standing with the bosses. I couldn't liven up the mood at drinking parties, and even got scolded for not speaking up more. Kevin climbed the ladder successfully and became my boss. He looked down on me. Completely useless old men who stay at the bottom are just a waste. We don't need men who can't advance, he would say. It was normal for him to spew such insults. You live alone, right? You must be bored at home. You should work overtime and contribute a bit more to the company. He would often force me to do overtime. Though it's painful to admit, Kevin was right in a way. When I go home, there's no one there, and I have nothing to do. I used to live with my wife and child. My wife was an amazing woman, too good for me, always smiling and devoted to housework and child rearing. When our son Jason was born, our home became livelier. Jason loved music from a young age and started piano lessons. The sound of the piano became a daily occurrence in our house. He also loved playing with the toys I made. Seeing my son play with my creations made me feel my job was worthwhile. Even if work didn't go well, as long as my family was happy, that was enough for me. But those peaceful days didn't last long. When I was still 30, my wife passed away due to illness. Left behind, I was in a daze of grief. I was at a loss on how to live after losing my wife, but I had Jason. I couldn't afford to be down forever, so began my days of focusing on home life. Embarrassingly, I had left most of the housework and child rearing to my wife, so at first I struggled a lot. My cooking was always burnt, and Jason would complain it was awful. But what was more challenging was taking care of Jason. About a month after my wife passed, he began to frequently throw tantrums, saying, "I want Mom. Let me see Mom." I felt the same way about wanting to see my wife. Holding Jason tightly with a heavy heart, I managed to say, "I'll do my best for both me and Mom." What would someone eloquent say in such a situation? I resented my own lack of eloquence. It was tough at first, but as time went on, I gradually got used to the household chores and became more efficient at them. As Jason grew up, he seemed to understand our family situation and started to help me out, which was a great relief. As he entered his teenage years, our conversations decreased, but he continued to help with the chores. Furthermore, on his 21st birthday, Jason said, "Thanks for raising me all these years." I was deeply moved by this and couldn't help but cry. It's a great relief to see him grow up into such a kind person. Jason moved out when he graduated from college to live on his own. I was happy to see him become independent, but the loneliness outweighed my happiness. Living in an empty house turned out to be lonelier than I had imagined. Before I knew it, I had aged and suddenly found myself at 59. One day, when I went to work, Kevin approached me with a smug grin. I had a bad feeling about it. The first thing he said was shocking. "You're fired." I was stunned by the suddenness of it. My mind went blank. "May I ask why?" I asked with a trembling voice. Kevin continued almost gleefully. "Did you forget I mentioned a while ago about downsizing due to poor performance? You're a 59-year-old low-level employee. It's not a big deal if you're let go. Just so you know, this was a decision from the top. Don't blame me. I thought the downsizing was supposed to focus on those with poor work attitudes." Though I found it unfair, I couldn't argue. I hadn't caused any trouble, but on the surface, I hadn't achieved anything notable either. I quickly resigned myself to the fact that being fired was inevitable. Seeing me downcast, Kevin looked even more amused. "Enjoy the little time you have left in your working life. Goodbye." Watching Kevin walk away triumphantly, I was convinced that my life was now on a downward slope. I had to tell Jason about being fired. It was hard to say, but I couldn't keep it from him forever. When I called him somewhat apprehensively, Jason's reaction was surprisingly gentle. "Dad, you've done enough. Now you can relax as much as you want." I was grateful to my son, who didn't blame me but instead comforted me. However, life after retirement was different than I imagined. Initially, I felt at ease without Kevin's harassment, but I soon found myself aimlessly drifting through each day. Unfulfilled, watching TV didn't really lift my spirits. I had thought work was tough because of Kevin, but after leaving, I realized I had taken pride in developing toys. Imagining the joy of children playing with the toys I created was enjoyable. Unable to find new sources of pleasure, I became increasingly despondent. 6 months after retirement, I started to lose sight of what I was living for. Sometimes I would murmur to my wife's portrait, "What should I do now?" While pondering this, I happened to see a feature on must-visit scenic spots. It's not that I had any particular interest. I just tuned in because I had nothing else to do. While watching aimlessly, a beautiful waterfall caught my eye. It was located in a forest and had recently become popular as a power spot. The waterfall was so beautiful it felt like it cleansed my soul, and I found myself mesmerized by it. I realized that I had been living in the hustle and bustle of the city for so long without ever really connecting with nature. To change my mood, I decided to actually visit the place. It had been a while since I had felt the urge to do something on my own. Leaving my recent gloom behind, I quickly prepared for the trip. Before I knew it, the day of the trip arrived. I arrived at my destination without hesitation and stepped into the forest. The air was crisp and refreshing. The greenery of the trees was beautiful. Although the waterfall was still ahead, I knew coming here was the right choice. After about an hour of walking, the scenery opened up, and the waterfall appeared. It was even more beautiful and impressive than in the videos. Just watching the water cascade down was soothing to my soul. I could understand why it was called a power spot. It was a weekday, so there were few people around. As I was thinking of finding a spot to sit and enjoy the view, I noticed a woman sitting next to a large tree. She looked to be in her 20s. Her shoe was off, and she was looking at her foot. Her foot was swollen, and her beautiful face seemed to be in pain. I instinctively called out to her, "Are you okay?" Startled by a stranger suddenly speaking to her, she forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. It's just..." Her foot was clearly swollen, and it didn't look good at all. It would take an hour to walk out of the forest. Going back alone seemed difficult. "Excuse me, I have time, and if you don't mind, I can drive you to a hospital. I came to the entrance of this forest by rental car, so I can give you a lift. Please don't push yourself." The woman hesitated, but I assured her, "Please don't feel obliged." Eventually, she relented and said, "Please, I would appreciate that." I twisted my ankle walking in the forest. I didn't want to return without seeing the waterfall, so I pushed myself, but it got worse. I supported her out of the forest and drove to the hospital in my rental car. The doctor said, "It's not serious, but you need to rest for a while." Afterward, I took her to the hotel where she was staying. Her name was Emily, and she loved traveling. Emily told me about the various tourist places she had visited. She was a great storyteller, and listening to her made me want to visit those places. Surprisingly for me, the conversation flowed smoothly, even though it was our first meeting. We continued chatting even after arriving at her hotel room. I didn't have any other plans besides seeing the waterfall, and Emily, unable to go out due to her injury, wanted me to stay and keep her company. During our conversation, I learned that Emily lived in the same town as me and even knew about my former workplace. It's surprising how well she knew about such a small company. Eventually, the topic changed, and she asked, "Why did you come here, Michael?" After some hesitation and wondering where to start, I ended up telling her everything from the beginning. "Well, actually, I got fired from my job." Despite it not being the kind of story you typically share with someone you just met, Emily listened to it all. It turned out that she had also quit her job due to exhausting office relationships and understood my situation. Her love for travel began as a way to refresh herself by visiting different places around the country. "For all the hardship you faced, I'm sure good things are ahead in your life," she comforted me. Her empathy touched me deeply, and I was grateful. Despite the unexpected events, it turned out to be a heartwarming trip. After returning from the trip, I received a call from Jason. He invited me out, saying, "There's a great bar I know. How about we go for a drink? It may be nosy of me, but I was worried you might have been feeling lonely. Let's go out and have a good time. I have a lot to talk about too." Nosy? Not at all. It's true that I've been living a lonely life lately. I appreciated Jason's concern. Come to think of it, it had been a long time since Jason and I had a drink together. I think the last time was on his 21st birthday. The thought of drinking with my son after so long lifted my spirits, and I quickly agreed. Unfortunately, it was pouring rain on the day of our appointment. Still, the thought of seeing Jason made the rain seem less bothersome. I took the train and arrived at the designated bar, but Jason hadn't arrived yet. He had told me it was a popular place, and indeed, most of the seats were filled. Luckily, there was one seat near the entrance that was empty, so I took it. As I was looking at the menu, the door of the bar opened. I casually glanced up and was shocked. It was Kevin who had walked in. He also noticed me and initially looked surprised, but his expression quickly turned mocking. Well, what a coincidence to see you here enjoying life after getting fired," he said, and uninvited, sat opposite me. My son is supposed to join me soon. I'm sorry, but could you please find another seat?" I hesitated but protested. Kevin's eyes narrowed. Why should I care? I want to drink here too. Besides, I'm a regular at this bar. I should be given priority. I thought his demand was ridiculous, but Kevin kept pressing. Someone as dull as you doesn't deserve to drink here. It's raining, so why don't you go outside and drink rainwater? That suits you better. Kevin dismissively waved his hand, snatched the menu from me, and started looking through it. It seemed unlikely he would move just by a few words of request. Not wanting to cause a scene and disturb the bar, I decided to wait for another seat to open up. I reluctantly stood up from my seat. Noticing the concerned look from the waiter, I assured them, "It's fine. I can take another seat." Just then, the door of the bar opened again. Two people entered. One was Jason, but to my surprise, the other was Emily. "What a coincidence to meet here. This is amazing," I exclaimed, surprised although I was taken aback. Emily seemed as if she had anticipated this encounter. "Meeting you here isn't a coincidence. Actually, Jason and I know each other and have an important matter to discuss, so we came together." I was bewildered by this sudden turn of events. The fact that Jason and Emily knew each other was surprising enough, but what could this important matter be? "We'd like to talk right away, but it seems the place is full," Emily observed, looking around the bar with a disappointed expression. Then her face lit up as she spotted Kevin. Could it be that she also knew Kevin? Kevin noticed Emily staring and said, "Stop staring. It's rude." An intimidated Emily confidently approached his table and sat down without asking. "Since Kevin is here, let's discuss everything now. It's a very important matter, so I'll take a seat. Michael, please sit down too. I want you to hear this." Surprised by Emily's assertive attitude, I sat down as she instructed. "Who the hell are you, being so rude?" Kevin demanded. Emily then revealed something unexpected. "Sorry for not introducing myself earlier. I'm the daughter of the president of Colorado Toys. My name is Emily." "What?" I exclaimed in surprise. Meeting the daughter of the president of the company I used to work for by chance while traveling was an incredible stroke of luck. Kevin was visibly taken aback. Emily continued her story. "I recently met Michael. He's such a kind person, and it didn't seem right that he was fired. I asked my father why such a nice man was let go. He told me it was because he received reports of poor work performance, but I couldn't believe it. I shared with my father the story of our encounter during my travels, insisting on a proper investigation. My father agreed to look into it, seeing how earnestly I pleaded." Emily glared sharply at Kevin. It turned out that Kevin had lied about Michael's work performance, saying it was poor, negatively influencing the management's opinion of him. "What evidence do you have for that?" "It's a false accusation," Kevin protested, his face turning pale. Emily remained calm. "We obtained testimonies from Michael's former colleagues. They all unanimously said Michael was a good person. It's strange that he was fired. Those traitors." Kevin's face now turned red with anger. Emily spoke with an air of disdain. If you must blame someone, blame yourself for your foolish actions. You will soon face the consequences. Be prepared. What? Don't mess with me. Kevin stood up, moving aggressively towards Emily. I was about to intervene when a stern-looking waiter approached. His name tag read Manager Brian. He gave Kevin a stern look. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you please lower your voice? It's disturbing other customers. How dare you speak to a regular like me that way? Despite Kevin's high-handed attitude, Brian, the manager, responded firmly in a low voice. I'll just say it as it is, you're a troublesome customer. When you get drunk, you cause issues with other patrons, and we've received complaints asking us to deal with it. We'd rather not have a regular like you chased away. Kevin turned pale and hardly left the bar. I thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. You really helped us out. It's no problem at all, Brian replied with a hearty smile before returning to the back of the bar. Afterward, Jason, Emily, and I decided to have a good time together. Emily and Jason had two important things to share. The first was about Kevin's misconduct. It was pure coincidence that Kevin was at the bar, and both were as surprised as I was. The second was a delightful piece of news. Emily and Jason were in a relationship and considering marriage. Their meeting story was quite touching. Emily, after graduating from university on her own merit, had joined a major corporation. However, once her identity as the company president's daughter became known, baseless rumors spread that she had gotten the job through connections. No matter how hard she worked, she couldn't gain trust, leading to a difficult time. One day, she saw a man playing street piano at a station. It was Jason. After graduating from a music college, Jason had been working as a pianist, performing across the country. According to Emily, Jason's performance was wonderful, and just listening to it felt like a balm for her soul. She approached Jason to thank him after his performance, but she was so moved that she found herself in tears. Concerned, Jason listened to her story and suggested she travel around the country. He often traveled for work and believed unexpected encounters and discoveries enriched the heart. Upon hearing that, Emily decided to quit her job and set out on her travels. As she kept in touch with Jason during her journey, they grew closer and eventually started dating. Jason had arranged this meetup to introduce Emily and simultaneously cheer me up. Naturally, I supported their relationship and congratulated them. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to the wedding, I said. Jason laughed. We haven't even decided when to get married yet. You're getting ahead of yourself. But he looked pleased. The three of us then enjoyed a pleasant meal and drinks together. It seemed that Brian, the manager, had overheard our conversation, as he kindly provided us with some complimentary dishes. Thus, the enjoyable night wore on. A few days after the incident at the bar, I heard from Emily that Kevin had been fired. It turned out he was not only harassing others, but also embezzling company funds. Apparently, his family had had enough and left him. Meanwhile, I returned to work and got involved in toy development again. My past achievements were recognized, and I was promoted. Now able to fully utilize my skills, I launched new products one after another, contributing greatly to the company's growth. Many consumers thanked me for the wonderful toys, which was incredibly gratifying. Jason and Emily were also delighted with my success. As kids, they loved the toys I developed, so their happiness meant even more to me. Recently, they celebrated their wedding. They are now enjoying a blissful married life. Influenced by Emily, I've grown quite fond of traveling, often taking trips on weekends. My personal life has finally become fulfilling, and living feels enjoyable now. There was a time when I was worried about what the future held, but now it seems life will be good. I feel like my wife in heaven is